What is up, guys? It is Quinn here, and in today's video, we are going to be talking about some safe fantasy football options, and more specifically, safety at the running back position. So if you're drafting a running back, first, second, third round, wherever you're drafting your running backs, you want them to be on the field, and you want them to be locked in producers in your lineup, because if you're spending that premium draft capital and they're either busting or constantly getting injured, that's obviously kind of going to suck for your fantasy football rosters. And everyone likes to draft differently. Some people like to take those big swings. They want to go after the high upside player. Other people may just want to locate safety, and that may differ for your strategy, in different areas of the draft. So I'm going to be talking about, I believe, 3 or 4 running backs today that I think are very safe for fantasy football. And when I'm looking at safety, I'm kind of looking at 3 main points. The first one is going to be that they have locked in workloads. They have kind of proven to us their workload is established. It's not under threat from other options on their rosters. The second thing is going to be that they have a track record of success. These are players who have consistently produced at a high level for fantasy football. And then the last one is just going to be kind of avoiding these injury landmines. I'm someone who thinks that injury prone gets thrown out way too much, but I do think, it's important to be looking after running backs who have really never gotten hurt. I think that definitely gives them an extra level of safety. So those are kind of like the 3 main factors I was looking at. And the first player that really stuck out to me as a safe option was Joe Mixon. Right now, he's going off the board as the running back 7, and he's going at the round 1, round 2 turn. It's 12th overall, 13, 14, somewhere in that range. I do think he lacks some of the upside of the other running backs going around him, but I think he has a very, very solid floor, which obviously is going to give him safety. His workload on the ground is locked in. So these are his carry per game numbers over the last 4 seasons. So 2018, 16.9 carries per game, 2019, 17.4, 2020, 19.8, and then 2021 last season, 18.3 carries per game. This is basically the same backfield as last year. You have Samaje Perine and Chris Evans as the backups. I think he should have high touchdown upside once again. Obviously, this Bengals offense is very, very solid. This offseason, we've seen that offensive line go from a pretty garbage unit to probably a top 10 offensive line in the NFL. So, that touchdown upside's there. I also think we could see some efficiency upgrades. Mixon hasn't been a running back who's been overly efficient throughout his career, but I feel a bad offensive line majorly upgrading is obviously going to help him in terms of his yards per carry numbers, yards per touch, all of that stuff. He has a decent receiving role kind of locked in. I don't think he's going to regress in that department. It's possible he gains more work in the receiving game, but he really doesn't need it to be a safe fantasy football option. And then looking at the injury side of it, Joe Mixon has played in 14 plus games in 4 of his 5 NFL seasons, so really nothing to worry about there. Moving on to the next safe running back, it is going to be Aaron Jones. Right now, he's being drafted as the RB9, a mid-second round pick. He was the RB13 in points per game last season. I will admit that was a down year for Aaron Jones, but he still has had a very solid locked-in workload, both on the ground and in the air. So these are his workloads over the last 3 seasons, starting off with 2019, 14.8 carries per game, 4.3 targets per game, 2020, 14.4 carries per game, 4.5 targets per game, and then in 2021, we did see a slight drop off in the carries at 11.4, but that target number held steady at 4.3. We expect this Packers offense to be a high scoring unit. That's going to equal touchdown upside for Aaron Jones. I also think it's very likely we see an expanded receiving role for Aaron Jones. He's been very involved the last few years. I mentioned at least 4 carries in each of the last 3 seasons, but we're looking at this roster. Devontae Adams is gone. You're looking at a wide receiver core with Allen Lazard, Christian Watson, Sammy Watkins. This is not a strong unit. Aaron Jones has been known as a very reliable receiver, so I think he's also going to see a bump there. So even if those carries aren't in the close to 15 carry per game range, I still think he will be very safe. And right now in half point PPR and PPR formats, he just seems like a lock to be a top 12 running back. Now moving on to the third running back, it is Leonard Fournette, playoff Lenny, going off the board as the RB11, going at that 2-3 turn. So kind of in that range with Saquon Barkley, Javonte Williams, those guys. All those players are very close together. But just looking back at last year, Leonard Fournette was the RB4 in points per game and then the RB6 in total points. He checks all the boxes for safety. He's in a top tier offense. Bucks had the second highest scoring offense last season, a solid workload last year, 12.9 carries per game, 6 targets per game. They also locked him up to a 3-year extension. So they're paying him, $21 million for 3 years. They're not paying that guy that money to be like in a 50-50 timeshare. That is starter money. That is a very solid contract for a running back. And in my opinion, the only legit competition here is third rounder Rachaad White. I am a big fan of Rachaad White. He could start to eat into Fournette's touches, maybe in future seasons. But like Tom Brady's coming back. This is, Leonard Fournette has the chemistry there. I really do believe Leonard Fournette is locked in to be the guy. He was a very reliable receiver last year. Brady trusts him. You have Rob Gronkowski gone, Antonio Brown gone, Godwin coming off of the ACL. I think the Bucs may actually rely on the running back position even more, whether that means, more rush attempts or more, receiving involvement for those running backs. It could be either one. Either one is obviously going to benefit Leonard Fournette. We also know he's going to be getting the valuable opportunities on this team. Last season, he was third in targets and third in red zone touches. You want the work in the receiving game, and then you want the opportunities near the goal line. He got both of them. So here's the RB11. I feel like he has a very high floor and also, is kind of set up to have a very high ceiling. And I think he has a very strong shot of outperforming his ADP and not just kind of like limping to a back end RB1 finish. I wouldn't be surprised if he was like RB4, RB5, somewhere in that range. And now we have the fourth and final safe running back, and that is going to be Nick Chubb. He's going basically right after Fournette. I don't think I mentioned him in that like cluster of running backs, but he is also going at the 2-3 turn. And I think you can make a very strong argument that Nick Chubb is probably the safest, most, consistent year-to-year running back in fantasy football. Just looking at the last 3 seasons in terms of fantasy PPR points per game, 2019, 16 points per game, 2020, 17.3, 2021, 15.4, all in a very pretty small range. And then looking at his finishes, in comparison to the rest of the running backs, 2019 RB12, 2020 RB9, 2021 RB12, and then same thing for carries per game. Just kind of trying to show here, how consistent he is on a year-to-year basis. 2019, 18.6 carries per game, 2020, 15.8, 2021, 16.3. This man is locked into a solid workload, no matter what's going on around him. If he's the workhorse, if he has Kareem Hunt there, Nick Chubb is still going to produce. It's also possible that Kareem Hunt is released before the season. That would obviously boost, Nick Chubb's workload. I think it would help Nick Chubb if Deshaun Watson was on the field. It doesn't look like he is going to be, but Chubb's produced in bad offenses. They were going to be a run-first team, if Deshaun Watson is not out there. So I still think Chubb will be fine. And really, no matter what happens, Kareem Hunt's there, Deshaun Watson's playing, Deshaun Watson's suspended. No matter what, it seems like he's just a lock to finish as like a low-end RB1 or a high-end RB2. That's what we've seen so far. Not really expecting that to change. Arguably the best pure runner in the NFL. You could totally make a case for that. So Nick Chubb, the definition of consistency at the running back position. So those are the 4 players, and that is going to wrap it up for this one. Let me know what you guys think about these players down below in the comment section. And then tomorrow I'll go over the wide receivers. Same style of video, safest options. I think I also have 4 wide receivers, so stay tuned for that. Thank you all for stopping by, and I'll see you guys in the next one.